Self-esteem, loss of interest, anxiety, poor outlook on life. Depression can wreak havoc on your emotional health.
There was a study done recently that looked at a large sample of patients, and it discovered that they were experiencing long term depression. And this long term depression caused their brains to shrink. They had reduced volume in the brain regions that are related to planning your behavior, focusing your attention, thinking and learning and remembering, and also regulating your emotions. And I thought this was an interesting study, and it kind of shows how psychological or emotional illnesses, is there emotional illness, maybe psychological, or I don't know, basically anything related to your psychology can affect you physically. Things that you think, right? We don't often think that our emotions and our thought patterns can affect us physically, or what we're experiencing, the stress in our environment or that we go through every day can affect us physically. And they found that this is related to brain shrinkage. According to the study, depression is defined as a major depressive disorder, a mood disorder that causes persistent feeling of sadness and loss of interest. It changes the way a person feels, thinks, and behave. So, based on other studies, people suffering from depression, recurring depression, half of them experience a relapse after 2 years, and basically 90% experience depressive episodes after 3 or 4 episodes. They've had recurring depression. It could be linked to structural changes in the brain, they've discovered. And this could also be related to the brain shrinkage. They're saying the results aren't uniform, but they do see like some type of relation to brain shrinkage. So the study was done in Germany in two cities. I think one city is Münster. I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Münster and Marburg. And so the patients, they participated in like a diagnostic review, and they basically went over the patient's symptoms, and they studied them for a while, and they found shrinkage in the patient's brains. Now, I also wondered if this could also be related to poor performance, whether at school or at work, because it does say it affects their thinking, their processing emotion, their mood swings. So I wonder, does this also occur on the short term, right? If somebody's experiencing something, some traumatic event, and they can't think straight, people pass out, people can't communicate clearly, they're having, certain breakdowns or episodes. I wonder if this is part of a short term temporary depression. Anything happen, an accident, or a family member is severely sick or injured, and it throws people in chaos, right? And in the chaos, it causes stress on the body, which also can cause depression. Or is this like a short term depression? I don't know. This is just something I'm wondering. The details of the findings showed that it looked at different parts of the brain that were affected. I actually haven't done this in a while. I did this in previous videos. I had AI assistants, so I have my little personal AI, and I'm going to use him to go over the details of parts of the brain that are affected that this study discovered. So Max, give us the details of parts of the brain that are discovered. I mean, that are affected, not discovered. Give us some details on parts of the brain that are affected.
These two components were found to be linked with specific changes in the brain structure. Longer durations of illness were associated with lower volumes of gray mass in the left hippocampal and dorsolateral prefrontal cortex regions of the brain. Higher hospitalization scores were associated with significantly decreased gray mass volume in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, on both sides, and left insular regions of the brain.
Thanks, Max. As we see there, Max illustrated there are two components were linked with specific changes in the brain structure, and one is longer durations of illness. This causes lower volumes of gray mass on the left hippocampal. And for those of you who don't know what that is, not exactly if I'm clear on that either. I guess it's on the left front portion. We'll take a look at that in more detail later in the video. And they also were associated with lower volumes of or shrinkage in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex regions of the brain. Another component is higher hospitalization scores were associated with significantly decreased brain mass volume in dorsolateral prefrontal cortex on both sides. So basically, in layman's terms, you experience brain shrinkage in various parts of your brain when you're suffering from depression and you're hospitalized for a long period of time and you're experiencing long-term depression. Long-term hospitalization, long-term depression coupled with higher hospitalization rates, and your brain shrinks. I can see how this would happen. Basically, the logic behind it, it seemed like it would affect, I don't know, your ability to process things, your ability to kind of solve problems, your ability to basically manage your emotions, things like that. I've also heard of this happening with people who experience dementia. I have a video actually that's related to this. It shows a connection between depression and dementia, and I'll play that video later on. And also I have another video that relates depression to anxiety and dementia. And it's interesting how over time we can do this to ourselves if we don't manage our stress levels and we don't manage our nutrition, and as well as things that happen to us inside the home. I think it's good to try to keep our stress levels to a minimum. If we can't control, things that happen to us, maybe at work or at school, at least in the house, especially family members. Thing is, you're going to experience things outside of your house, okay? And it's important for family to make inside your home as peaceful as possible, right? Don't always try to, as parents, don't always try to control your kids' lives by trying to live vicariously through them or put extra stresses on them. Kids, they may not always have the wisdom, but sometimes it's common sense, right? Try to just be quiet, right? Or try to not stress out your parents, right? Just listen once, don't be so hard-headed, right? Because everybody needs peace in the home. It's vital to our health, and it's not just this is something we can do as far as we have some ability, right? We can't control what happens outside to cause depression. Some things happen, accidents happen, catastrophes happen. There are things that affect people far away. If they see it on the news, it can cause some slight depression, or maybe affect somebody who's already depressed. I think we need to look at these things. Okay, next I'm going to take a look at a video that goes into detail in how depression can lead to dementia.
Really think about these things when you're young, but they certainly can affect you as you age. There are a lot of problems that can go alongside depression, including anxiety and low self-esteem. But there are also some conditions that depression can cause later in life. A new study is linking depression with dementia. Low self-esteem, loss of interest, anxiety, poor outlook on life. Depression can wreak havoc on your emotional health. But a new study from UC San Francisco has found depression can also be damaging to your brain health. The researchers discovered the part of the brain that is essential for your ability to organize and store your memories can be damaged through excess stress hormones and an increase in depression. This finding suggests that depression and mental health declines in young adults. It can increase their chances of developing a neurodegenerative disease.
If we identify people at high risk for developing dementia in the future, that creates a window of opportunity to intervene.
So what are ways young people can prevent developing dementia later in life? A new study in the UK has shown that children who eat 5 or more portions of fruit and vegetables a day had the highest scoring mental health values and well-being. Another thing that can help:
pushing yourself to exercise regularly probably helps with some degree of mood improvement.
Exercise keeps your serotonin levels up, as well as cutting down on excessive drinking and smoking. Reaching out for help with your mental health can not only improve your life, but keep your risk of dementia at bay. So more recently, psychiatric aspects of these neurodegenerative diseases are being recognized as a big factor in the onset of dementia. due to the link between mental health issues and then mental decline. Loneliness, stress, and social isolation are also contributing factors to this disease. So get help early.
Okay, I like how they looked into nutrition aspects and exercise and again eating healthy. I would have liked to see how, maybe just one or two thoughts on preventative measures. And we all know how good exercise and eating healthy is, but at the same time, that can help you in the battle. But how do you prevent depression? And at the end there, you notice she says depression can be caused by isolation, stress, loneliness, right? Sometimes these can be easy, sometimes it can be hard because it depends on there are variables involved that are outside of yourself if you're someone dealing with it. If you know someone dealing with depression, maybe you yourself can say, okay, maybe I can try not to be a stressor, especially if you're in your home with them, right? Try not to be a stressor. Of course, just being around and being supportive. That way, you're not isolating them. I mean, again, this is something you could do to help someone else, as far as not experience depression, which could slide into dementia in their older age. Now, imagine the study that I mentioned earlier before the video says long-term depression causes brain shrinkage. Now, I don't know, is brain shrinkage related to dementia? I don't know. Maybe there's a study out there as well. I'm going to take a look at another video that ties depression and anxiety to dementia, right? And it also, at the end of that video, I'm not going to play the end of the video, but it just talks about some eye movement exercises that help you cope or strategize. But it takes a more detailed look into tying anxiety, depression, and dementia together, right? And it talks about how the brain shrinks, but what's not mentioned in the study and the first video is that they say the amygdala, which is a tiny portion of the brain, actually increases in size, and I think that's related to the anxiety portion of or just the anxiety tied into depression and dementia. So let's take a look at this second video and I'll give my thoughts after.
Researchers have found depression is linked to areas of the brain shrinking in size, but when depression is paired with anxiety, one area of the brain becomes significantly larger. A new study published in the Journal of Psychiatry and Neuroscience looked at more than 10,000 people to find the effects of depression and anxiety on brain volume. The study shows depression shrinks the hippocampus, which is situated in the middle of your brain and is the part of the brain linked to memory and learning. So prolonged depression can actually reduce your ability to learn new information and recall it. But in contrast, the study found that when depression and anxiety occur together, it leads to an increase in the size of the part of the brain linked to emotions, the amygdala. This is really interesting because most studies looking at the effect of depression on the brain do not account for the fact that people who have depression often experience anxiety too. Indeed, anxiety and depression are closely linked and are often part of a process that people run many times a day, because depression is the process of feeling regret about past events, which usually leads to anxiety, which is the process of worrying about future events. I cover this process of depressing in far more detail in one of my other videos, and you can find a link in the description. Now, a particularly important finding of this research is that people who had both depression and anxiety had less shrinkage in many brain areas, and even an increase in the amygdala. This indicates that the true effect of depression on the brain has been underestimated because of an opposite effect in the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is a walnut-shaped structure in the center of our emotional brain, which is the fear center of the brain, and when overstimulated, sends out an alarm signal that carries the stress hormone called cortisol to the rest of the body. So what this research suggests is that people who regularly feel depression and anxiety shrink their capacity to learn whilst increasing their ability to feel fear. That seems to me to be an incredibly powerful method of preventing people from escaping from the situation. and probably explains why depression and anxiety is the most debilitating disorder worldwide, with recent studies showing that following COVID-19, 1 in 5 adults experience periods of depression and anxiety on a regular basis. Now, without depressing you even more, this research is of concern because a smaller hippocampus is also a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease and may accelerate the development of dementia. So what is really important if you or someone you know suffers from depression is to take action. And
So that shows that there is a link between depression and Alzheimer's and dementia, because it shows that the shrinkage in your brain can lead to Alzheimer's and dementia. So it's fascinating, because how do we prevent that? I know at the end of the video I didn't show it, but he goes into what they call eye movement therapy. Okay, again, there's ways maybe we could combat depression, but how do we, especially in this day and age with so much going on, there should always be a focus of, proactive. How do we prevent depression? Okay, how do we prevent people from getting old and experience dementia or Alzheimer's? Because this is more occurring in more developed modern nations, right? I don't see this as much in more developing countries, or people who live a more, a life with fresh air, less stress. I think it's the constant go lifestyle. You who like to spend time on social media and always be busy, always out there, living your best life. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with enjoyment. Are you really enjoying, or are you trying to, live up to something else? That's a whole other video, but it could be tied. Again, it's tied to depression. So let's see, are there ways to prevent this? How can you prevent this as an individual? I think everybody should take the concept or take the ideas from this video as, how can I prevent myself from getting depressed short term as well as long term? Because from what you described, it's like a perpetual falling, because the anxiety, depression, and so many things lead people to be anxious. I could go on and on, but I just thought I would try to connect the points that this could affect you in your older age, and you should probably try to attack it in a younger age. Again, diet, exercise, peace of mind, focus, less stress, and those type of things. I want to thank you for your patience and listening. I really appreciate it. If you could please like and subscribe and help me get more viewers or viewership on the videos, so I can discuss these things as it relates to helping people cope with issues like this and other related topics. Again, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.